Rivers have always been a special gathering place, a source of life and well-being, and for Christians, a place to understand the ways of God through baptism. In August of 1882, Stephen Cheek and Frederick Troy spent a week preaching at Zillman's waterholes, baptising 16 people, and establishing a new Church of Christ in Queensland. To Churches of Christ, baptisms were a visible sign of church growth and an essential part of the simple Christianity they built the movement upon.
So baptism requires a person to be fully immersed in water, and then they rise up to a fresh, new start. It's a simple act, and yet it's a powerful outward symbol of an inward change of heart and mind. Jesus taught that a person must willingly choose to follow his ways in order to come near to God. This choice first takes place in the private, invisible chamber of the mind and begins with one simple prayer: please teach me, I want to know you.
The baptisms at Zillman's waterholes and establishment of a new Church of Christ in Queensland was just the beginning of something wonderful. Following the way of Jesus, early church pioneers first visited their local communities and then worked their way outward to all other nations. Jesus said, "Make disciples of all nations." And in the very first decade of growth, Churches of Christ went down the path of building a multicultural body of believers. Overseas and home missions ran hand in hand from the earliest days. In 1906, the Foreign Missions Committee was established with gifted speakers including Les Brooker and Ernest Hinrichsen, spreading the word largely through the means of tent missions.
Hinrichsen was only 20 years of age when he began his work with Churches of Christ, but over the next 35 years, it's estimated that some 30,000 people heard the gospel of Jesus Christ, not only here in Australia, but in New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. He was known as the Prince of Preachers.
During the time when the White Australia policy existed, Churches of Christ showed a love and care to all ethnicities and rejected the injustices and racist beliefs. We can see evidence of this as early as 1892 in the work pioneered by John Thompson among marginalised South Sea Islanders. Unregulated private porters had brought the islanders to Australia to work as indentured labourers in the cotton industry and on the sugarcane fields in Queensland. By 1890, their numbers had swelled to 60,000. They found themselves in terrible working conditions, and their reported death rate was 15 times that of white males of the same age. For 15 years, Thompson worked to improve the well-being of the islanders by showing compassionate care, teaching literacy, and sharing the knowledge of Jesus. He established a church in Childers, and by the end of the first year, 90 islanders had come to faith and been baptised. To Thompson, care for the soul and the body were inseparable. Supported by his wife and close friend, Islander Willie Tabby Mancun, Thompson helped the church flourish in both Australia and Vanuatu. Back on Australian turf, the movement of Churches of Christ in Indigenous communities gained momentum in the 1940s, resulting in an outreach to the towns of Eidsvold, Normanton, Mareeba and Logan. The leaders worked tirelessly for improved housing conditions, education, employment opportunities and health. During this time, many Indigenous lives were transformed, empowered by the hope and knowledge of Jesus and the fellowship of Churches of Christ. Today, our multicultural congregations shine the universal power and love of God through their communities. The Zillman Church community is as multicultural as they come.
Once a month we share a community brunch at the Zillman Church, and it's been interesting because when we do have the brunches we find that it's like the United Nations, and I think on one brunch we counted that over 20 different nationalities was present there, so a really interesting time together. One of my good friends is sitting right beside me here. Everyone knows him as Uncle Cole. Became a Christian just very recently when I started going to Zillman. And because of his new faith, he wanted to start a community Bible study in his home. People kept coming, so what we've had to do now is just move it on to the church where we can fit more people in.
The baby outgrew the crib, and that was a great delight to me, even though I sort of instigated and an inquiring mind and just a young Christian, an old young Christian.
Yeah, that's right.
It's relationships like Jonathan's and Uncle Colin's in communities like Zillman that show how ordinary folk have the power to make a difference in the world as they respond to the needs of their neighbours in the love of Christ. It's people like them that have helped our church grow. From the first conference executive committee formed in 1883 that resulted in 22 churches and 587 followers in the first 10 years, to the church we know today with 4,823 members across 67 locations, Churches of Christ continues to grow. And our positive growth isn't just about numbers. We can't quantify the positive impact we've had on individuals both in the church and in our communities. As one unified church, we'll continue to grow stronger together.